Good morning. Welcome to this message time. It is a gorgeous morning here in Washington State in Bellevue, just absolutely beautiful. I took the dogs for a walk this morning and it was cool and the sky is blue and the leaves are starting to change because autumn is just around the corner. So I hope wherever you're at this morning is as beautiful as it is here today. So we are 2 weeks into a worship series called A Church for Blank, in which we are exploring what we exist for as a church. And as I talk about this, I'm not just talking about Bellevue First United Methodist Church, but I'm talking about whatever church you're a part of, or the big capital C church, in terms of just why do we exist? What is our purpose? So we pay particular attention to that word "for." So, there we go. Yes, very professional recording. Thank you. So last week we talked about what it means to be a church for the people. And in that we really looked at a need to put others first, that we often come to our worship spaces and our church spaces with kind of a, or maybe not just kind of a consumer mentality where we're always asking, what's in it for me? And I sure hope they get my order right. And as we do so, we'll only get a superficial level of the church experience, of the faith experience. But as we begin to shape our church, our personal church experience, and our communal church experience around others, then it takes on a depth and a richness, which I believe is closest to what church was originally meant to be, what the faith community was originally meant to be. And it rescues us from the tyranny of preference, where, we're just constantly like, well, I prefer this. Well, I prefer this. When we start putting others first, it rescues us from that kind of thing, which is a bad place to be. So today we're talking about what it means to be a church for the planet. And in this, we're exploring what it means to be a church that has a green heart, a strangely warmed green heart. And this is particularly important to me because before I was a pastor, I was a zookeeper. And environmental concerns are deep concerns within me because I have a deep love for the natural world. And so this is an important topic for us. And to start with, I'd like to sort of introduce a story from when I was younger. So I was raised in Georgia. Many of you know that. And most evenings, you could walk outside unless it was very, very cold. So spring, summer, fall, and almost anywhere you were, unless you were in downtown Atlanta, you would see fireflies. And back then, when you were a kid, we called them lightning bugs. And you can say that with the Southern accent, and it's pretty fun. Lightning bugs. And maybe I'll edit that out. We'll see. Probably not. And they were everywhere. I grew up in a little condo complex, and our condo was right next to some woods. It backed up to the woods, and it was like a light show. The woods were dark, and then there were just thousands and thousands and thousands of fireflies every evening. And then we moved to a neighborhood in a standalone home, and even out in our front yard or side yard, there were fireflies. And it was almost an everyday occurrence. It was just common. And yet, if you go back to those same spaces now, you don't see them, or you see very, very few of them. We took my kids back to Georgia for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. That was, more years ago than probably 6 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. It seems like it was just yesterday, but it was probably quite a ways back. And we were up in North Georgia, and they got to see fireflies for the very first time, and I was really glad because they're really magical. But what we're experiencing, those of us who pay attention to things like that, is a huge decline in the numbers of fireflies. They are becoming just isolated in certain protected areas like state parks and national parks, whereas they used to be everywhere. And they, like a lot of other species, are our threshold species or our alarm species, where if you stop seeing them, then you know things are getting bad. And we know this. I mean, this has been in the news for the last 15, 20 years. And it's got me wondering over the years about what role churches play in this, and is there justification for us shaping our lives around this sort of thing? And I believe there is. I mean, one of the truest calls as people of faith is to care for the lost and least. It's a very direct commission from Jesus to care for the lost and the least. And we almost always understand this to be in reference to people. And that's good. When we talk about the lost and the least, especially the least, the disenfranchised, the impoverished, the disempowered, we think widows and orphans and that sort of thing, minorities, and that's all important. But I believe it's really important for us to expand our definition of who we are to care for, who we are caretakers for and of, to include the natural world. Because if we talk about who is the most vulnerable in our world, who has the least voice and least presence at the table, it's not people generally. It's members of our natural world, whether they be plants or animals and things like that. Like they have absolutely no voice. They have very, very little power, if any power at all, to protect themselves and to have agency as we go about doing our human things. And so, to me, one of the most important things we can do as people of faith and as faith communities is to live deeply into our call to be stewards. And this is kind of a beautiful thing because it's easily attainable for all of us. One of the challenges in working in social justice arenas is at times it's hard to know what to do. I don't encounter many people of faith who don't want justice, who don't want equal rights. And yet sometimes it's like, well, I don't know how to even begin to help. The problem seems so big, and the entry into areas where we can make a difference feels difficult. But when we talk about being good stewards as individuals and as faith communities, it's actually the threshold for entry into making a difference is pretty low. We can start very easily as individuals, and then we can do a lot as faith communities. And I'll put some resources at the end of this video to explore some ideas. But you already know what they are because they've been in front of us for a while, and maybe we haven't embraced them as much as we should have because we often feel like, oh, it's disconnected from our spirituality, it's disconnected from our faith lives. But I don't think so at all. I think it is very much a part of our call and part of how we live in right relationship to the world, which is what we're asked to do. I mean, that's much of what Jesus was trying to teach, and much of what the Bible is all about is teaching us how to be in right relationship, whether we're talking about right relationship with humans, other people, with money, which is a major, major topic. How do we stay in right relationship with money? How do we stay in right relationship with the natural world? This is our call, and this is our task. And so as we imagine what our churches can be and will be, hopefully, especially in this time where church is really changing. We know we're living through a tumultuous time where the institutions of this world, especially long-standing institutions, whether they be academic, educational, religious, even governmental, are being shaped, they're being challenged. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, even though it causes stress for those of us who are intertwined in these institutions. but it also presents us with a chance to reinvent and to discover who we are for a new day. And I believe deeply, deeply that our task right now and our responsibility right now, both as individuals and as faith communities, is to reimagine ourselves in better relationship to the natural world. Our footprint has to be smaller and lighter. And the cool thing about that is that nothing is isolated. Like economics and finance and environmental health and social justice and all of that are all intertwined. They're all linked together. And so the more we can work towards environmental health, that also helps with economic justice. It helps with racial justice. It helps with all sorts of things that we're also working towards. And so that's the neat part about it. That's the blessed part about how interconnected we are, is that our good work in one area cross-pollinates into another area of need. And so for those of us who are like, I don't know what to do about racial justice, well, I don't know what to do about economic disenfranchisement. We'll work towards environmental health, and that will play into those other areas. And I can't help but believe that when we notice the small things of in this world, like the fireflies, like the birds, like the moss growing on the rocks, like all the small things. And as we learn to appreciate them and learn to care for them as best we can, that helps teach us how to do the same in other areas of our lives. Faithful in small things, faithful in big things. If we can be faithful to caretaking one small space and thinking about it in terms of care and nurture, a backyard, a little courtyard like where I'm at now, then maybe we start to think about our finances differently. And then maybe we start to think about our faith communities or our neighborhoods differently, or how we commute, or how we spend our money differently, or how we exist in relationship in all these other areas. And so that's, I think, an incredible opportunity. So for us, I hope we can all continue to be a people for the planet, and all of our faith communities can be a church for the planet. And I think the promise is that if we will do a little work, God will join us in this beautiful recreation of the world in grace and peace and health. So let's get to work, and let's see if maybe we can create a world where there's a few more fireflies for our children again. I hope that you are all well and enjoying the gift of this day, and I will see you next week. Shalom and amen.